It's time for the 8-Minute Devotion. The 8-Minute Devotion is a daily message that fills you with hope and encouragement from the Word of God. Here's your host, Pastor Cameron Walcott.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the 8-Minute Devotion. So glad you've chosen to join us for this Wednesday episode, and we can spend this time together. You know, this is our Wednesday episode, so we're down to just 3 episodes left in this season of the podcast. We're calling this season 3, even though we've been doing this for about 6 years. Our first season lasted for about 4 years, and we're now in season 3. But with 3 episodes left this season, I want to finish up by talking about something that's very important to me, and that is I'm going to be talking about my son, Caleb. You see, Caleb was born 18 years ago, actually about 18 and a half years ago, and his high school graduation would have been just a couple weeks ago in May. Caleb would have graduated from high school. Now, those of you who have been watching or listening to this podcast for long at all, you know the story of Caleb. Caleb is my firstborn son, and, Caleb was an excellent young man. Caleb was a young man who loved Jesus, served in the church. He was a 4.0 student. He wrote 5 books. He was a star athlete, especially in basketball, football, but many of you know the story. In October of 2020, Caleb passed away suddenly in his sleep. He was 13 years and 10 months old when that happened, and we thought Caleb was perfectly healthy. You know, he was living life full speed. You know, he was busy in church, busy in school, getting perfect grades, playing a ton of sports. He was so busy in everything he was doing. He was making videos, writing songs. We thought he was perfectly healthy, but then the morning of October 6th, 2020, I found him unresponsive. He had passed away in the night due to a heart condition that we never knew he had. And he passed away because, his heart just stopped beating in the night. And that, of course, was such a grieving process for my wife and I and our family. That was such an awful thing to happen. You know, you never imagined that that's going to happen to your seemingly perfectly healthy child, and that did happen. And what my wife and I discovered, and our other kids, Evan and Anna, Caleb's younger brother, younger sister, we found that when we were at our lowest, that's when Jesus was at his nearest. But what ended up happening, the reason I'm going to talk about this the next 3 days is this. The school Caleb went to, Parkway Christian School in Sterling Heights, Michigan, they asked me to share during the graduation ceremony of the class of 2025. So the class that Caleb would have been a part of, many of the young men and young women in that class knew Caleb personally. Several of them were his best friends, and they had grown up with Caleb up through 8th grade when Caleb passed. They asked me to share in the commencement address. So it caused me to spend a lot of time thinking, what really matters? What would Caleb want to say to his classmates? What would Caleb want to say to all of us here today, and even all of us watching the podcast? What message would Caleb want to give us? So as I was speaking to these young men, as I was getting ready to speak to these young men and young women in the graduation, one phrase came to me. One phrase was what I started with, and it's the end of a poem by a man named C.T. Studd. C.T. Studd was a British missionary to China, India, and Africa in the 18 and 1900s. He also, by the way, was an elite cricket player. You know, cricket, the most popular sport right now in India and Sri Lanka. It was a very popular sport in England as well, especially back then. But this was the poem, the end of the poem by C.T. Studd. Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. Let me repeat that. Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. And as I got ready to speak to the graduates, and as I got ready to put together my commencement address, that was the first phrase that I built the message around, because that's what I felt God speaking to me. Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. And friends, whatever you do in life, whether you go to school, whether you get a job, whether you move across the country, whether you win another game or get another award, when you get married, when you have children, when you launch out and serve on the mission field, when you go and you start a church, if you go into business and make money, when you grow old, when you go through sickness, even if you go through great loss. As viewers, I know many of you, you're all at different stages of life. But remember, whatever you do, you are called to serve the Lord. Everything you do is to be through Him and for Him and by His grace, and it is to be done for His glory. Only what's done for Christ is ultimately going to last. You see, this applies for each and every one of you watching today. Only what we do for Jesus really matters and really lasts. So let's learn to look at our lives through an eternal perspective. The truth is that this life passes in a moment. In the twinkling of an eye, it passes by. I go back to thinking about Caleb. And, I remember in 2016 when my family moved back to the U.S. from Singapore. And I moved Delia and the 3 kids who had all been born in Singapore. We moved to the U.S. And Caleb joined Parkway Christian School, as well as Evan. Caleb was in 4th grade, Evan was in 2nd grade. And Delia joined a Facebook group back in 2016 when we moved here for the parents of the kids in Caleb's class. And that group was called Parkway Class of 2025. This was back in 2016. It was called Parkway Class of 2025. And I remember Delia showing me the group. And to me, that seemed impossibly far away. Class of 2025? Caleb was only in 4th grade. All his classmates were these little boys, little girls. That seems so far away. But in the blink of an eye, at the snap of the fingers, 2025 has come. And all these young men and women have graduated now. Caleb's classmates, in the blink of an eye, it comes. And friends, life passes so quickly. And that's why I want to remind you, at the start of this little 3-part series on, remembering Caleb and his graduation, only one life will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. Build your life around what really matters. John 14:6, Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. You see, Jesus is the only way, the only truth, the only life. And I believe that if we will keep our eyes on Him, it will help us so much. Now, saying only what's done for Christ will last, that doesn't mean we don't go to school, we don't get jobs, we don't raise our families. None of those things are disqualified, but it does mean that when we do these natural things, working, going to school, taking care of children's needs, taking care of our own physical needs, we're doing it for the glory of God. We're doing it with Jesus in our sight. We're doing it and saying, Lord, all that I do is for your glory. It's not about me. It's all about you. Lord, may everything I do be for the glory of God. And, I have 2 more episodes I want to share about Caleb, thoughts the Lord's been giving me over his graduation. You don't want to miss it, so make sure you join us tomorrow on the 8-Minute Devotion.
Thank you for listening to the 8-Minute Devotion. Please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you listen to or watch it. And email us at the8minutedevotion@gmail.com with any questions or comments. May God bless you